Hey, you. Yeah, you. Hey, what do you know about NATO? Yeah, I said NATO. I'm talking about the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Let me guess, you heard it in some news report while scrolling your phone, right before the ad for frozen meatballs popped up. Stuff like NATO holds emergency summit, or NATO condemns actions. And you're sitting there wondering, who's this NATO guy, and why is he always holding meetings? Maybe you're wondering, what is NATO exactly? Why was it created in the first place? Is it like the United Nations or something? Why do countries keep joining it? Who decides what NATO does? How do they pay for all this stuff? And what does this got to do with me? Somebody's always talking about NATO like it's something mysterious. But let me tell you, it's important, real important. Today, I'm going to give you the lowdown. From how NATO got started, who's in it, what they do, and how it affects you and me, right here in the good old US of A. Simple, clean, like a fresh cut soup. So pull up a chair and let's break bread with the truth. Capiche? Chapter 1. What is NATO? NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, got its start back in 1949. That's right after World War II, when the world was still rubbing its eyes and trying to make sense of the mess. Let me set the stage. Europe was in shambles, cities flattened, and economies shattered. The United States had stepped in with the Marshall Plan. That was a big economic aid package to help rebuild Europe and keep democracy alive. But it wasn't just about money. It was about protecting friends from slipping into chaos, or worse, falling under Soviet influence. See, back then, the world was dividing into two camps. The West, led by the US and its democratic allies, and the East, led by the Soviet Union, which was expanding communism like it was a pizza chain. Countries were nervous. The Cold War was heating up fast, and trust me, nobody wanted to face it alone. So, the US, Canada, and 10 Western European nations got together and said, let's form a club, one where we watch each other's backs. Back in 1949, the first 12 members were the United States, Canada, the United Kingdom, France, Italy, Belgium, the Netherlands, Luxembourg, Norway, Denmark, Iceland, and Portugal. And boom, NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, was born. The idea was simple, but powerful. If one member gets attacked, all the others treat it like an attack on themselves. That's what they call collective defense. Article 5 of NATO, the ride or die clause, baby. You mess with one, you mess with the whole crew. NATO wasn't just a pact, it was a promise. These countries weren't just building economies, they were building trust. NATO's not just military, it's a political alliance too. They work together on tech innovation, energy security, and peacekeeping. NATO became the security blanket of the West. And yes, it's always been called NATO, or OTAN if you're speaking French. But hey, let's keep it simple. NATO it is. Chapter 2. How is NATO organized? So, who's running this operation? Who's calling the shots? At the top, you got the Secretary General, the face and voice of NATO. Think Master of Ceremonies, Group Therapist, and the Public Relations Rep rolled into one. Right now, that's Jens Stoltenberg, a Norwegian politician who's been smoother than jazz since 2014, juggling egos and global crises like a pro. Then there's the North Atlantic Council. That's the big family dinner. Each country sends a rep. And get this, every decision's got to be unanimous. Every tiny Montenegro has the same say as the US. That's the whole charm of NATO. It's a partnership of equals. It's like every cousin at Thanksgiving having veto power over the menu. But how did they actually reach that unanimous decision? Good question. Behind the scenes, there's lots of talking. Whispered diplomacy. Coffee chats, hallway deals, late night texts. They do what it takes to align before anything hits the official table. Informal consultations happen constantly, before and after official meetings, to get everyone on the same page. Sometimes it takes days, weeks, or even months. But the idea is, once they bring it to the table, everyone's ready to nod. There's also the Military Committee, top brass from each member nation's armed forces. The generals, the strategists. They advise on strategy, tactics, deployments, and all that serious stuff, you know? They don't play, they plan. And below them, the two big strategic commands, the muscle. Number 1, Allied Command Operations, ACO. They run military operations. Boots on the ground, jets in the air, ships in the water, you know? Number 2, Allied Command Transformation, ACT, the futurists. These folks are always looking ahead. New tech, new training, future threats. Think Iron Man's tech team if they wore military uniforms with stars and chevrons on their shoulders. It ain't chaos, it's organized. Like a big old family business with global branches and a whole lot of conference calls. A strategic symphony of collaboration, if you will. Chapter 3. Who are the NATO members? Now let's talk membership. As of now, there are 32 countries in NATO. It started with 12, but it's been growing over the decades. Finland joined in 2023. They share over 800 miles of border with Russia. Talk about front row seats to the tension show. And Sweden followed in 2024, finally letting go of centuries of neutrality like a poker player going all in. To be eligible for membership, a country already has to be democratic, follow the rule of law, and have a stable military, and be willing to help defend others. To get in, a prospective member nation has got to pass the Membership Action Plan, MAP. It's like pledging a frat, with military reforms, political transparency, and public support required. Speaking of which, Ukraine is still trying to rush in on becoming a member of the family. But now isn't the right time. Each member contributes what they can. Every country brings something. The US brings big firepower. France brings diplomacy and nukes. Estonia, top-tier cyber brains. Chapter 4. Who pays for all of this? And let's talk about the money, shall we? NATO doesn't have a big piggy bank where everyone dumps cash. Instead, countries are expected to spend at least 2% of their GDP. That's gross domestic product on their own defense. This is not a donation to NATO. It's literally an investment in that member nation's own security. The historical 2% expectation was increased at the 2025 Hague Summit in the Netherlands. NATO members committed to increasing annual defense spending to 5% of their nation's GDP by 2035. NATO's common funds amount to approximately $5.4 billion and is split into 3 funds: a civil budget for headquarters, staff, and administrative overhead, and 2, a military budget for operations and infrastructure, funding the NATO command structure, and 3, the NATO Security Investment Program, which fund military infrastructure and capabilities. Some have been able to hit the 2% mark. The U.S., it spends well over 3.5% of its GDP on defense, and most of that supports NATO's infrastructure, air bases, troop deployments, and joint exercises. The U.S.'s payment to NATO accounts for nearly 70% of NATO's entire defense spending. Greece, surprisingly on point. Canada, not so much. They consistently contribute under 1.5%. Historically, did not provide a clear path to 2%. Germany's also been under the 2% line for years too, despite being Europe's largest economy. They even pledged to ramp up their payment in 2022, but they can't seem to fulfill the pledge. It's like going out to dinner with a friend who always forgets their wallet. Awkward. There's been some heat about that, let me tell you. Still, no one gets kicked out for underspending. But there's pressure. Big pressure. Chapter 5. What does NATO do? So, what does NATO actually do? Well, a whole lot more than just sitting around in meetings and wearing suits in Brussels. First, there's the big one, collective defense. That's Article 5 of the NATO Treaty. You hit one country, and the whole alliance treats it like an attack on all of them. And that article has only been used once since NATO's establishment. After the September 11 attacks in 2001, the U.S. got hit, and NATO stood up. German jets flew over American skies. Turkish forces guarded overseas U.S. bases. NATO allies also continued activity in Afghanistan. You had British SAS forces, German medics, French Mirage jets, and Czech engineers all pitching in with the U.S. over there. It was unity in action. But NATO's not just a one-trick pony. Over the years, they've taken on some major missions. Take ISAF, the International Security Assistance Force. That was NATO's operation in Afghanistan, which started in 2003. They helped stabilize the country, fight terrorism, and train Afghan forces until 2014, when they shifted to a support role. It was the biggest NATO operation ever, with troops from over 50 nations. Then there's KFOR, the Kosovo Force, a peacekeeping mission that's been going strong since 1999. Yep, NATO's still there. After conflict tore up the Balkans, NATO stepped in to keep the peace, protect civilians, and help build a stable environment in Kosovo. Besides military missions, NATO also trains troops, building up armies in member and partner countries, provides disaster relief, earthquakes, floods, and hurricanes. They show up, secures cyberspace. Hackers beware, NATO's getting real serious about digital threats. Just being part of NATO makes enemies think twice. It's about security, stability, and making sure no bad guy feels lucky, whether it's boots on the ground or bites in a server. Talking about the so-called bad guys, let me tell you something. We gotta shine a light on the folks running their mouths about NATO like it's some sort of street gang. You know, you got Russia over there making noise saying NATO moving east is a security issue, like they ain't never crossed the line before. Then China chimes in, acting like NATO is stuck in the Cold War or something, telling them to stop living in the past. Please, they ought to take a good look in the mirror before handing out advice. Chapter 6. When and where does NATO meet? NATO's got its main headquarters in Brussels, Belgium, known for chocolate, waffles, and their World Peace meetings. That's where the day-to-day stuff happens. But every 1 or 2 years, they host a big summit. The locations of the summits rotate among cities within the member NATO nations. These NATO summits are like family reunions, except with the capos of the member countries. We're talking presidents, prime ministers, chancellors, you know, the top dogs. Each country also brings their foreign minister and defense minister. You know, the folks who know where all the diplomatic and military levers are. Oh, and don't forget the NATO Secretary General. He's the one running the show, like the maitre d' of the whole alliance. Also in attendance are a few close friends of the family, non-member nations who NATO members have common interests with, like Japan, Australia, Ukraine, and honored guests, international financial and diplomatic organizations. Think the United Nations, UN, or the World Bank. They talk about emerging threats like terrorism or artificial intelligence used in warfare, defense budgets, welcoming new members, global crises, pandemics, energy shortages, and climate impact on security. Sometimes they even meet virtually. 2020 showed them how to Zoom like the rest of us. Chapter 7. Why should we care about NATO? Okay, so maybe you're thinking, alright, that's nice for Europe, but why should I, a tax-paying American, give a hoot? Glad you asked, Paisan. Here's why. Stable allies mean fewer wars the US gets dragged into. Shared defense equals we don't gotta be the world's cop all by ourselves. Cyber cooperation equals your bank, your phone, your social media, and Netflix account all safer. Economic stability equals when Europe's calm, gas and grocery prices stay reasonable, and your 401k don't tank. Military bases abroad equals strategic presence, faster response to danger. And get this, NATO has directly supported U.S. interests in big ways. During the Libya intervention in 2011, NATO coordinated airstrikes that aligned with U.S. policy to prevent a humanitarian disaster. So you're not watching NATO, you're living in the ripple effect of it. Literally. NATO secured sea routes off Somalia so global shipping could resume, therefore lowering the cost of shipped goods. You may have not noticed, but your Amazon Prime delivery certainly did. So yeah, NATO's a big deal. For your wallet, your digital life, your freedom, and your safety. It ain't just foreign policy, it's personal. Chapter 8. How does NATO impact the world? Everything NATO does makes waves, not just for world leaders, but for us regular folks. When NATO strengthens sanctions, global prices shift. When they deploy troops, tensions rise or fall. When they secure sea routes, goods get delivered on time. Even something small like joint training exercises, that affects global perception of strength. That could stop a war before it even starts. NATO's helped stop genocide in Kosovo, train troops in Iraq, rebuild Afghanistan's security forces, fight piracy off Somalia's coast. They even flew 120 tons of COVID supplies to allies in 2020. When it hits the fan, NATO shows up. It's like a game of global dominoes, and NATO's the hand that keeps the table steady. Chapter 9. What are the current initiatives of NATO? Now we're talking the present. Right now, in 2025. What's NATO up to these days? Let's just say they ain't sitting around playing cards. First off, climate and defense. That's a biggie. NATO's pushing for greener military operations. We're seeing electric tanks on the test field, solar-powered field stations, and even biofuel-run naval vessels. Through the NATO Climate Change and Security Action Plan, they're training forces to operate in extreme weather conditions and shrink their carbon footprints. Then there's emerging tech. We're talking artificial intelligence, robotics, big data. NATO's got this whole setup called the Defense Innovation Accelerator for the North Atlantic, or DIANA. They've launched test centers across the alliance, from the UK to Estonia, where they work with startups developing battlefield-ready AI, secure communications, and autonomous drones. One project even helps soldiers detect IEDs, improvised explosive devices, with machine vision. And don't forget about space. That's right, NATO's looking up. They now treat space like land, sea, air, and cyberspace as a domain to defend. They've got a space center in Germany watching for satellite interference, missile threats, or foreign signals jamming communications. Outer space, it's on NATO's radar. Now let's talk cyber rapid response teams. These tech-savvy squads can be deployed in hours to a NATO member under digital attack. Whether it's ransomware, sabotage, or foreign bots stirring up disinfo, NATO's keeping firewalls strong and systems tight. Lastly, there's the NATO 2030 agenda, the alliance's vision for the future. It ain't just about war, it's about resilience. They're expanding ties in the Indo-Pacific, strengthening supply chains, and guarding against hybrid threats, like a mix of fake news, cyber strikes, and economic pressure. So yeah, NATO ain't just about tanks and troops anymore. It's about data, climate, innovation, satellites, and security, all rolled up in one big alliance. The world's changing, and NATO's gearing up to change with it. Alright, let me wrap it up for you. NATO, born in 1949 to stop bullies from starting fights on the global stage. Organized with councils, generals, and strategic commands. Got 32 members today and $5.4 billion in the bank. You gotta meet criteria and spend on your own defense if you want to join the family. Main goal: keeping the peace and beefing up the security for members of the NATO family. Headquartered in Brussels and has their big summits every 1 or 2 years in member cities. Impacts you economically, digitally, and militarily. You made it through. You're officially smarter than you were 20 minutes ago. So what are you waiting for? Hit that like button. Drop a comment about your favorite NATO member nation. Share this video and subscribe to Capiche 001, where complex topics make perfect sense. More plain talking, brain boosting videos coming your way. Capiche?